Jersey Shore was basically a quiet area. You got a lot of residents that lived there, went to school there, had business there, but you'd get a big influx of tourists in the summertime. During the war years, military took all the hotels, just like they did here in Pinellas County. The early part of the war, they did basic training there. They marched on the boardwalk, they did calisthenics on the beaches, and then as the war got into full swing, several of the hotels were turned into hospitals. We know what our weather patterns here. We knew when we were going to get a nor'easter, the north half of Atlantic City, what they call the inlet section, be underwater. That tide came, there was no holding it back. There was no warning, and I think part of that had to do with the fact that we were still at war. Now, I do remember I went into school, my homeroom at Atlantic City High School was on the second floor, and I could see the ocean, and it was angry. And we went, I think, to 2 period classes, and then we were sent back to the homeroom, and over the loudspeaker they announced that school was closed, everybody go home. There's a storm coming, but they never used the word hurricane. We could see the lifeguards brought the boats up, put them upside down on the boardwalk and tied them to the rails. And by late afternoon, 4-ish, 5-ish, the boardwalk was picked up and turned upside down, and it crushed those boats like you would a peanut shell. You hear the wind whistling, roaring, and it does make quite an ominous sound. My mother showed a lot of fear because we had these big windows, and I think she thought those windows were coming in. She kept us mostly up into the kitchen, dining area, and doing a lot of praying, a lot of praying. There were parts of the town that were under 5 foot of water. Wires were down, just like you see here when we have a bad storm. We saw, we had a lot of piers. Steel Pier, part of it was gone. There was a pier called Hammond's $1 Million Pier. It was down. Heinz, the food people, owned a pier. It was gone completely. It was just demolished. That part of the city was just cleaned out, demolished. Miles and miles of the boardwalk destroyed, sand in the streets, just like when we get a storm here. And it was something to sober you up. You look at it and you realize the destruction that a storm like this can create. You had the military there. I think the military helped with the high-wheeled trucks. And we had Coast Guard there. There was a Coast Guard training station there. And as you know, during the war, they were always looking out for submarines and saboteurs. So you had Coast Guardsmen patrolling the beaches. And the city fathers rebuilt that boardwalk. They rebuilt that boardwalk, totally. And obviously they bought some new lifeboats.
Have you lived through a hurricane? If so, we want to hear from you. Your first-hand account may convince reluctant residents to take the necessary steps to protect their lives and their properties. If you have a storm story we'd like to share, you can email it to stormstory@pinellascounty.org, or send your story to Project Storm Story, 333 Chestnut Street, Clearwater, Florida 33756.